3, 2, 1. Got it. The money's ours. We're out.
The text message that destroyed my life arrived at 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, right as I was explaining to a client why his electrical bill looked like the national debt. Mr. Parrish, your credit card ending in 4829 has been charged $847.50 at Everglades Paradise Resort and Spa. Funny thing about that message. My wife Beth was supposed to be at a girls' spa weekend in Destin with her friends Lisa and Carmen. Last I checked, Destin was nowhere near the Everglades. But hey, what do I know? I'm just Graham Parrish, the guy who pays the bills. I'm 39, built like someone who used to defuse bombs for Uncle Sam and now runs Parrish Brothers Electrical with my older brother John. We've got the biggest contracting business in 3 counties, thanks to my obsessive attention to detail and John's natural charm with clients. Beth always said I was the brains, John was the personality. Guess that should have been my first warning. Everything okay, Graham? Mary, our CFO, poked her head into my office. She's been with us since we started the company 5 years ago, sharp as a tack and twice as reliable as most people I know. Just peachy, I said, staring at the text. Beth's having such a good time in Destin that she somehow teleported to the Everglades. Mary frowned. That's odd. Lisa posted on Instagram this morning from that fancy spa in Destin. Showed her getting a massage. My stomach dropped somewhere around my boots. You sure about that? Positive. I follow her because she always posts the best restaurant recommendations. Mary pulled out her phone, scrolled for a second, then showed me the screen. There was Lisa, face down on a massage table, caption reading, Girls Trip Bliss at Serenity Spa, Destin. Day 2 of pure relaxation. Day 2. Beth had been gone for 2 days. If Lisa was in Destin, and Beth was charging luxury resort stays in the Everglades, then who exactly was my wife vacationing with? I spent the rest of the afternoon pretending to work while my mind raced through possibilities. Maybe Beth had changed plans. Maybe there was some mix-up with the credit cards. Maybe I was being paranoid because my wife had been acting strange for months. Cold, distant, always on her phone, always tired when I reached for her in bed. When I got home to our house in Magnolia Heights, the girls were doing homework at the kitchen table. Beau, 15 and sharp as her mother, looked up from her calculus. Mom call yet? Not yet, sweetheart. You know how she gets when she's relaxing. Probably has her phone turned off. Bree, 13 and still young enough to believe her parents were perfect, grinned. She promised to bring us back those shell necklaces from the beach. I'm sure she will, I said, wondering what kind of shells they had in the Everglades. Probably the kind that came from my brother's private collection. See, here's what I hadn't mentioned yet. John Parrish, my beloved business partner and older brother, had been acting weird lately, too. Secretive phone calls, mysterious client meetings that never appeared on our shared calendar, and a sudden interest in weekend trips. Just last week, he'd mentioned something about checking out a new resort for potential company retreats. Somewhere in the Everglades, he'd said. Real private, real exclusive. I made dinner for the girls, spaghetti and meatballs, Beth's recipe, and tried to act normal. But normal was getting harder by the minute, especially when Beau asked, Dad, why do you look like someone stole your truck? Just tired, kiddo. Long day at work. After they went to bed, I did what any reasonable husband would do. I logged into our credit card account and started tracking my wife's mysterious vacation. The charges told a story I didn't want to read. Monday, $347.50. Everglades Paradise Resort, dinner for 2, Monday $89.99. Paradise Gift Shop, romantic package. Tuesday, $847.50. Resort Suite Upgrade, Lovers Retreat Package. Lovers Retreat Package. My wife of 16 years, mother of my 2 daughters, was on a lover's retreat. and unless she'd suddenly developed multiple personality disorder, she wasn't alone. I poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon and sat in my home office, staring at the credit card statements. The bourbon didn't help. Neither did the photos I found when I started digging deeper into John's social media. My brother, who barely posted anything except business updates, had suddenly become quite the photographer. Sunset over water, expensive cocktails. A woman's hand holding a martini glass, a hand wearing the anniversary ring I'd bought Beth 2 years ago. The timestamp on the photo was yesterday at 6:23 p.m. Right around the time Beth had texted me saying she was exhausted from all the spa treatments and going to bed early. I spent the night in my office, building a case like I used to build evidence for explosive device investigations in the Army. Every detail mattered. Every connection could save your life or end it. By morning, I had a file folder thick with printouts, screenshots, and a growing certainty that my wife and my brother were screwing me over in the most literal sense possible. The question wasn't whether they were having an affair. The question was what I was going to do about it. Wednesday morning came with the kind of Florida humidity that makes you sweat, just thinking about going outside. I dropped the girls at school, kissed them goodbye like always, and drove to the office with a plan forming in my head. If Beth and John thought they were playing chess, they were about to learn I'd been playing 3-dimensional warfare since before they figured out how to lie convincingly. First stop, Ricky Chalmers, my best friend since high school, and the one person I trusted completely. Ricky ran a private investigation service out of a strip mall office that smelled like coffee and broken dreams. But he was good at his job. More importantly, he'd been my wingman through 2 deployments and knew how to keep his mouth shut. Graham. Ricky looked up from his computer, grinning. What brings you to my palace of surveillance and suspicion? Need a favor, I said, closing the door behind me. The kind that stays between us. His smile faded. What's going on? I laid out everything. The credit card charges, the Instagram photos, John's mysterious behavior, Beth's cold shoulder for the past 6 months. Ricky listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding or making notes on a legal pad. Son of a witch, he said when I finished. Your own brother? Looks that way. I need proof, real proof, not just circumstantial evidence. Ricky leaned back in his chair. I can do that. GPS tracking on her car, phone records if you can get me access, maybe some surveillance photos. But Graham, you sure you want to go down this road? Sometimes it's better not to know. I already know, I said. Now I need ammunition. Back at the office, I started phase 2 of my investigation. Mary had access to all our business accounts, and I had a suspicion that John's sudden interest in expensive resorts wasn't coming out of his personal budget. Mary, can you pull up our expense reports for the last 3 months? Specifically, John's client entertainment and travel expenses. She gave me a look that said she knew exactly what I was looking for. Sure thing. Might take a few minutes to compile everything. While she worked, I called Beth. The phone rang 4 times before going to voicemail. Hey honey, just checking in. The girls miss you. Call me when you get a chance. 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed with a text. Having amazing time. Phone dying, will call tonight. Love you. Love you, right. I screenshotted the message and noted the timestamp. 10:47 a.m. Then I called the Everglades Paradise Resort directly. Paradise Resort, this is Jennifer. How can I help you? Hi, Jennifer. This is Graham Parrish. My wife Beth is staying with you, and I wanted to surprise her with some flowers delivered to her room. Could you tell me what room she's in? Let me check. Yes, Mrs. Parrish is in our Lover's Retreat Suite. That's room 247. Would you like me to connect you to our concierge for flower delivery? Actually, could you tell me if she's registered alone or with someone? I want to make sure I send enough flowers. There was a pause. Sir, the reservation shows Mr. and Mrs. Parrish checked in Monday afternoon. Is there a problem? Mr. and Mrs. Parrish. My brother was using my last name to shack up with my wife. The audacity was almost impressive. No problem at all, I managed. Just wanted to confirm. Thank you. Mary appeared in my doorway as I hung up, holding a thick folder. You're not going to like this, she said. The expense reports told the story I'd expected, but hoped I wouldn't find. John had been billing client development trips for months, always to romantic destinations, always for 2 people, always charged to our business account. The Everglades resort was just the latest in a series that included a weekend in Key West, a trip to Savannah, and a long weekend in New Orleans. Total cost to the company over $15,000. Mary, I said carefully, how long have you suspected? She sighed and sat down across from my desk. About 2 months. John asked me to keep the travel expenses confidential, said he was working on landing a big client and didn't want to jinx it. But the charges never made sense. Couples massages aren't usually part of business development. Why didn't you say anything? Because I hoped I was wrong. And because. She hesitated. Because I wasn't sure you'd want to know. I spent the rest of the morning making copies of everything, expense reports, credit card statements, phone records I could access through our family plan. By lunch, I had enough evidence to bury both of them in divorce court and probably get John kicked out of the business we'd built together. But I wasn't ready to play that card yet. First, I wanted to see exactly how far they'd go with their deception. I drove home for lunch, something I never did, and called Beth again. This time, she answered on the second ring. Graham, I was just thinking about you. Really? What were you thinking? Oh, just missing home. The spa is wonderful, but I can't wait to see you and the girls. How's the weather in Destin? Beautiful. Sunny and warm. Perfect beach weather. I was looking at the weather app on my phone. Destin was getting hammered by thunderstorms. The Everglades, on the other hand, were sunny and 85 degrees. That's great, honey. Lisa posted some nice photos from the spa. Oh, yes, she's having a wonderful time, too. We all are. The lie came so easily, so smoothly, that I almost admired her skill. 16 years of marriage, and I'd never realized what a talented actress my wife was. When are you coming home? Tomorrow afternoon. I'll be there in time to make dinner. Looking forward to it, I said. Love you? Love you too. After she hung up, I sat in my kitchen and made a decision. If Beth and John wanted to play games, I'd give them a game they'd never forget. But first, I needed to know exactly what I was dealing with. I called Ricky back. Change of plans. I want surveillance photos. Today. And I want to know exactly who's in that hotel room with my wife. You sure about this, Graham? I'm sure. And Ricky, bring your good camera. I want pictures clear enough for a jury to see. Thursday morning, I woke up with the kind of clarity that comes from finally understanding the truth. Beth was coming home that afternoon, probably with some story about her wonderful girls' trip and maybe a few shells or postcards as props. John would show up at the office with his usual charming smile, ready to pretend he hadn't been screwing his brother's wife on the company dime. But I had other plans. Ricky called at 7 a.m. with the photos I'd requested. Graham, you're not going to want to see these, but you need to. Bring them to the office. And Ricky? Make extra copies of everything. The photos were worse than I'd imagined, and exactly what I'd expected. Beth and John at the resort restaurant, holding hands across the table. Beth and John by the pool, her head on his shoulder. Beth and John kissing in the parking lot next to John's BMW. The timestamps showed they'd been together since Monday morning. The entire time, Beth had been telling me about her spa weekend with the girls. But the photo that hit me hardest was the last one. Beth and John in the hotel room, visible through the partially open curtains. They weren't doing anything explicit, just sitting on the bed talking. But Beth was wearing the silk nightgown I'd bought her for our anniversary last year, the one she'd claimed she'd lost. "There's more," Ricky said quietly. I did some digging into their communications. "Your brother's been sloppy with his digital security. He handed me printouts of text messages between Beth and John going back 4 months. The early messages were flirtatious but could have been misinterpreted. The recent ones left no room for doubt. Beth, can't wait to feel your hands on me again. John, Graham's working late tonight. Come over after the girls are asleep. Beth, this weekend will be perfect. He actually believes I'm going to a spa. John, my brother always was naive. Makes this almost too easy." That last message hit me like a punch to the gut. Not just because of what they were doing, but because of how little they thought of me. John thought I was naive. Easy to fool. A convenient mark for their affair. They were about to learn how wrong they were. I spent the morning setting up what I privately called Operation Swamp Justice. First, I met with our business lawyer and had him draw up papers to remove John from the company. The expense report fraud gave me grounds, and my majority ownership gave me the power. Second, I moved half our joint savings into a separate account, not to hide money from Beth, but to make sure she couldn't clean us out when the divorce started. Third, I made copies of everything and stored them in 3 different locations. But I made one crucial mistake. I trusted my best friend. "Ricky," I said as we finished organizing the evidence, "I need you to keep all this quiet until I'm ready to move. Can you do that?" "Of course, man. You know I've got your back." "Good. I'm going to confront them tonight after Beth gets home. I want to see if they'll come clean or keep lying." Ricky nodded, but something in his expression bothered me. A nervousness I hadn't seen before. "Graham, maybe you should think about this more. I mean, confronting them together might not be the best idea." "Why not?" Because people do crazy things when they're cornered. Maybe you should talk to Beth alone first. I should have listened to that little voice in my head that said Ricky was acting strange. Should have wondered why my best friend suddenly seemed more concerned about Beth and John's welfare than mine. Should have remembered that Ricky had been spending a lot of time at the office lately, chatting with John about business and life. But I was focused on my plan, confident in my preparation, and completely unprepared for the betrayal that was coming. Beth got home at 4:30, looking tanned and relaxed and beautiful. She hugged the girls, distributed the shell necklaces she'd somehow acquired, and started making dinner like nothing had happened. I watched her move around our kitchen, chatting about her wonderful spa weekend, and marveled at how easily the lies flowed. "How was Lisa?" I asked as she chopped vegetables for salad. "Oh, she had a great time." We all did. Very relaxing. "And Carmen?" "Carmen, too. You know how she gets at spas, wants to try every treatment they offer." I pulled out my phone and showed her Lisa's Instagram feed. "Funny, Lisa's posts make it look like you weren't there." Beth glanced at the screen without missing a beat. "Oh, you know how Instagram is. She probably posted old photos or something. You can't believe everything you see on social media. The audacity was breathtaking." Even confronted with evidence, she was doubling down on the lie. "Beth," I said quietly, "I know where you were." She stopped chopping and looked at me. For just a second, I saw fear in her eyes. Then the mask slipped back into place. "I don't know what you're talking about, Graham. I was at the spa with Lisa and Carmen. If you don't believe me, you can call them. I'm sure they'd back up your story. The question is whether they know they're lying, or if you've got them convinced too." The girls were in the living room, doing homework and watching TV, so they couldn't hear us. But I could see Beth calculating, trying to figure out how much I knew and how much I was guessing. "Graham, you're being paranoid. I went to a spa with my friends. End of story." I was about to show her the photos when my phone rang. John's name appeared on the screen. Answer it, Beth said quickly. Put it on speaker. Maybe he can talk some sense into you. I should have wondered why she was so eager for me to talk to John. Should have realized that she'd already texted him, warned him that I was suspicious. Should have understood that they'd prepared for this moment. Instead, I answered the phone. Hey, Graham. John's voice was casual, friendly. Beth told me you're having some crazy ideas about her girl's trip. Want to grab a beer and talk about it? Sure, I said. Why don't you come over? We can all talk about it together. There was a pause. All of us? You, me, and Beth. Clear the air once and for all. I'll be right there. He arrived 20 minutes later, all smiles and concern. Graham, buddy, what's this about? Beth says you think she wasn't really at the spa? I looked at both of them, my wife of 16 years and my brother and business partner, and realized they'd rehearsed this. They had their story straight, their expressions perfect, their concern for my mental state touching and believable. So I played my ace. I have photos, I said simply. The change was instantaneous. Beth went pale. John's smile disappeared. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. What kind of photos? Beth asked. I pulled out the pictures Ricky had taken and spread them across the kitchen table. Beth and John holding hands, Beth and John kissing, Beth and John in the hotel room. Professional quality, I said, time-stamped, legally admissible. John recovered first. Graham, I can explain. Please do. I'm fascinated to hear how you explain screwing my wife on our company's expense account. It's not what it looks like. Really? Because it looks like my brother and my wife have been having an affair for months, lying to my face, and stealing from our business to fund their romantic getaways. Beth started crying. Not the honest tears of someone caught and ashamed, but the calculated tears of someone trying to manipulate the situation. Graham, please, let me explain. It just happened. We never meant for it to go this far. How far did you mean for it to go? John stepped closer, and I noticed his hands were clenched into fists. Look, Graham, maybe we can work this out. No need to involve lawyers or make this public. We can figure out some kind of arrangement. What kind of arrangement? Well, Beth's not happy in the marriage. Hasn't been for a while. Maybe it's time to admit that and handle this like adults. I looked at my brother, really looked at him. John had always been bigger than me, more charming, more confident. Growing up, he'd gotten the girls, the attention, the easy path through life. I'd been the responsible one, the one who worked harder, who earned everything through discipline and determination. And now he wanted to take my wife and make it sound like he was doing me a favor. Handle it like adults, I repeated. You mean like you handled it when you decided to screw my wife behind my back for 4 months? Graham, Beth started. Shut up, I said, and the coldness in my voice surprised all of us. Both of you, just shut up for a minute. I walked to the window and looked out at our neighborhood. Nice houses, well-kept lawns, families living their normal lives. In a few minutes, I was going to shatter that normalcy forever. Here's what's going to happen, I said, turning back to them. Beth, you're going to pack a bag and leave. Tonight. You can stay with John, or your sister, or whoever you want, but you're not sleeping in this house. Graham, please. John, you're out of the business. I'll buy out your share at fair market value, minus what you stole for your little romantic adventures. John's face darkened. You can't do that. I own 51%. I can do whatever I want. The girls? Beth started. The girls will stay with me. You can see them on weekends, supervised, until we work out a custody arrangement. You fool, John said. You self-righteous fool. You think you're so much better than everyone else. I think I'm better than people who lie, cheat, and steal from their own family. If that makes me self-righteous, I can live with it. That's when John smiled, and I realized I'd made a terrible mistake. Actually, Graham, I don't think that's how this is going to work out. What do you mean? I mean, your friend Ricky called me this afternoon, told me all about your little investigation, your photos, your plans, gave me plenty of time to prepare. The world seemed to tilt sideways. What? Ricky's been working for me for months, keeping me informed about your activities. Did you really think I wouldn't notice you poking around asking questions? I've been 3 steps ahead of you this entire time. I looked at Beth, and she was smiling now too. Not the fake manipulative smile from before, but something cold and carnivore. The thing is, Graham, she said, John and I have been planning this for a while. The affair was just the beginning. We want it all. The house, the business, the kids. And thanks to your paranoid behavior and jealous rage, we're going to get it. What are you talking about? John pulled out his phone and showed me the screen. A recording app was running. I've been recording this entire conversation. You threatening me, trying to force Beth out of her own home, talking about taking the children away from their mother. Add that to the photos Ricky took of you following us, stalking us, and we've got a pretty good case for a restraining order. You're insane. Am I? Or am I just better at this game than you are? That's when I heard the cars pulling into my driveway. Through the window, I could see Ricky getting out of his truck, followed by 2 men I didn't recognize. Graham, Beth said softly, you should have just accepted that I was leaving you. Should have made this easy. Now we're going to have to do this the hard way. The front door opened and Ricky walked in like he owned the place. Behind him came the 2 strangers, big men with the kind of faces that suggested violence was just another job skill. Sorry, Graham, Ricky said, not looking sorry at all, but John made me an offer I couldn't refuse. Partnership in the new business plus a nice bonus for keeping tabs on you. I was outnumbered, outmaneuvered, and completely screwed. But I was also a former Army EOD specialist who'd spent 3 years defusing bombs under pressure. If they thought I was going down without a fight, they were about to learn better. Girls, I shouted toward the living room. Go to your rooms and lock the doors. That's when everything went to hell. The chloroform-soaked rag came from behind while I was focused on the 2 strangers blocking my front door. Ricky, my best friend since high school, my brother in arms through 2 deployments, pressed the chemical-soaked cloth over my nose and mouth while John held my arms. Nothing personal, Graham? Ricky whispered as consciousness faded. Just business. The last thing I heard was Beth's voice, calm and controlled. Make sure the girls don't see anything. They need to believe their father just left. I woke up in the back of a van, hands zip-tied behind me, head pounding like someone had used it for batting practice. The familiar scent of Beth's perfume mixed with John's expensive cologne told me I wasn't alone. Through the small window, I could see we were driving through the Everglades on a narrow road that looked like it hadn't been maintained since the Carter administration. Look who's awake, John said from the driver's seat. How you feeling, little brother? Like I've been sedated and abducted by my own family, I croaked. My throat felt like I'd been gargling with sandpaper. Beth turned around from the passenger seat, and I barely recognized her. The woman I'd married, the mother of my children, was looking at me with the kind of cold calculation usually reserved for business transactions. Graham, I want you to understand something, she said. This isn't personal. It's just the most practical solution to our problem. What problem is that? You, John said cheerfully. See, Beth and I want to be together, but divorce is messy, expensive, complicated, especially when there's a business involved and kids to consider. So you decided to homicide me instead? Homicide's such an ugly word, Beth said. We prefer to think of it as simplifying the situation. Ricky, sitting across from me in the back of the van, wouldn't meet my eyes. Graham, man, I tried to talk them out of this. But John's right. It's the cleanest solution. The cleanest solution, I repeated. My best friend thinks eliminating me is a clean solution. You were never going to let this go, John said. We all know that. You'd fight the divorce, tie up the business in court for years, make everything as difficult as possible. This way, Beth gets to be the grieving widow, I get to be the supportive brother-in-law, and everyone moves on with their lives. Except me. Well, yeah, except you. The van hit a pothole that felt like a small earthquake, and I used the jarring motion to test my restraints. Zip ties, but not the heavy-duty kind. The cheap plastic ones that John kept in the company trucks for organizing cables. I'd learned to break those in Army survival training, but I needed time and the right angle. Where are we going? I asked. Little place John found, Beth said. Very private, very remote. The kind of place where a man might go to think about his failing marriage and make some bad decisions. You're going to make it look like self-destruction. Self-destruction notes already written, John said. Very touching. You're sorry for the pain you've caused. You can't live with what you've done to your family. You hope Beth and the girls can forgive you someday. What have I done to my family? Well, according to the note, you've been having an affair. Embezzling money from the business, drinking heavily, becoming violent and unpredictable. I almost laughed. Nobody's going to believe that. They will when they find the evidence, Ricky said quietly. The fake bank accounts, the planted photos, the witnesses who'll testify about your erratic behavior. What witnesses? Me, for one, Beth said. I'll tell everyone how you changed after you found out about my affair. How you became obsessed with revenge, started making threats, scared the girls. The girls know me better than that. The girls are 15 and 13, John said. They'll believe what the adults in their lives tell them to believe, especially when those adults are all they have left. The van turned off the paved road onto a dirt track that felt like it was trying to shake us apart. Through the windows, I could see we were deep in the Everglades now, surrounded by sawgrass and cypress trees, and the kind of wilderness where bodies disappeared forever. You know what the beautiful thing about the Everglades is? John asked conversationally. Gators. Lots and lots of gators. They're not picky eaters, and they don't leave much evidence behind. I was working on the zip ties while they talked, using the van's movement to hide my efforts. The plastic was starting to stretch, but I needed more time. How long have you been planning this? I asked. About 6 months, Beth said. Ever since John and I realized we were serious about each other. 6 months. So this whole thing, the affair, the elaborate deception, even getting Ricky involved, all of it was just a setup for homicide. It was supposed to be simpler, John said. You were supposed to find out about the affair, go crazy, maybe have a breakdown. Make it easy for Beth to divorce you and take everything. But you're too damn stubborn, too smart. You started building a case instead of falling apart. So you decided to eliminate me. We decided to solve the problem permanently. The zip ties snapped. I kept my hands behind my back, acting like I was still restrained while I planned my next move. 3 of them, 1 of me, in a moving vehicle on a remote road. Not great odds, but I'd faced worse in Middle East. The key was timing and surprise. John was driving, so he couldn't react quickly. Beth was turned around talking to me, not paying attention to her surroundings. Ricky was the wild card. He knew my military training, knew what I was capable of, but he also looked nervous and distracted. You know what I don't understand? I said, trying to keep them talking while I prepared. Why Ricky? What did you offer him that was worth betraying 20 years of friendship? Partnership in the new business, Ricky said. John starting his own electrical company. Gonna need someone to handle security, investigations, the stuff you can't put in a regular job description. And you believed him? Why wouldn't I? Because John's about to homicide his own brother. What makes you think he won't do the same to you when you become inconvenient? I saw doubt flicker in Ricky's eyes just for a second. That was all I needed. The van hit another pothole, and I used the jarring motion to launch myself forward. My shoulder caught Ricky in the chest, slamming him back against the van's wall. Before he could recover, I had his tool, a .38 revolver he kept in a shoulder holster. "Pull over," I told John, pressing the tool against the back of his neck. "Graham, don't be stupid," Beth said. "You're just making this worse." Worse than being eliminated by my own family? I don't think so. John's eyes met mine in the rearview mirror. "You won't shoot me, Graham." "You're not a butcher." "You're right," I said. "I'm not a butcher. But I am someone who's really tired of being lied to and betrayed by people I trusted." I shifted the tool to point at the van's rear tire and pulled the trigger. The bang was deafening in the enclosed space. The van lurched violently to the right as the tire exploded, and John fought to keep us on the road. We skidded sideways, hit the soft shoulder, and rolled down an embankment into a cypress swamp. The van hit the water with a splash that soaked everyone inside. We were in about 3 feet of murky Everglades water, surrounded by cypress trees and the kind of wildlife that made this place famous. "Everybody out," I said, still holding the tool. Nice and slow. John was cursing and holding his forehead where he'd hit the steering wheel. Beth was soaked and furious. Ricky was looking at me like he'd never seen me before. "Graham," he said, "what's your plan here?" "We're in the middle of nowhere, no cell service, miles from the nearest road. Even if you get away, where are you going to go?" "I'm not the one who needs to worry about getting away," I said. "I'm the one with the tool." That's when I heard the sirens. Distant, but getting closer. The unmistakable sound of police cars and emergency vehicles. John heard them too, and his face went white. "How?" he whispered. I smiled for the first time in days. "You really think I'd confront you without backup?" "I may be naive, John, but I'm not stupid." The truth was, I'd planted GPS trackers on all their vehicles before the confrontation. I'd also set up a dead man's switch. If I didn't check in with a secure service every 6 hours, all my evidence would be automatically sent to the police, the FBI, and every news outlet in the state. But they didn't need to know that. "The thing about being married to someone for 16 years, I told Beth, is you learn their patterns. You've been checking your phone every 10 minutes since you got home, texting someone. I figured it was John, but it could have been anyone. So I cloned your phone 3 days ago. Every text, every call, every GPS location, all backed up to a secure server and scheduled to be released if anything happened to me." John's face was getting redder by the minute. "You're bluffing." "Am I? Want to bet your freedom on it?" The sirens were getting closer. Through the trees, I could see flashing lights on the main road. "Here's what's going to happen," I said. "We're going to walk out of this swamp together. You're going to surrender to the police, and you're going to confess to everything. The affair, the embezzlement, the abduction, the attempted homicide." "And if we don't?" Beth asked. "Then I'll let the evidence speak for itself. But I should mention, I've got recordings of this entire conversation, thanks to the wire I've been wearing since you got home." I pulled a small recording device from my shirt pocket. The red light was still blinking. "You son of a witch," John said. "No, John. I'm your brother, or I was, until you decided to destroy our family for money and Zex." The police found us 20 minutes later, standing in knee-deep swamp water, like the world's most dysfunctional family reunion. John and Beth were in handcuffs within minutes. Ricky tried to run, but didn't get far in the swamp. As they loaded my wife and brother into separate police cars, Beth looked at me through the window. "This isn't over, Graham," she mouthed. I walked over to the car and tapped on the glass. When she rolled down the window, I leaned in close. "Yes, it is," I said quietly. "You forgot something important when you planned all this." "What's that?" I spent 3 years in Middle East defusing bombs planted by people who wanted to eliminate me. Did you really think I couldn't handle 3 amateurs from Florida? The police car drove away, taking my wife toward a future that definitely didn't include me or my daughters. The next 72 hours felt like living inside a tornado made of lawyers, reporters, and social workers. By Friday morning, the story was front-page news in 3 counties. Local business owner abducted by wife and brother in homicide plot. The headline made it sound like a bad made-for-TV movie, but the details were all too real. I was sitting in my kitchen drinking coffee and trying to explain to Bew and Bry why their mother wasn't coming home, when my lawyer called with an update. "Graham, we've got good news and complicated news," said Patricia Hendricks, the best family attorney in the state, and worth every penny of her ridiculous hourly rate. The good news is that Beth and John are both being held without bail. Abduction, conspiracy to commit homicide, embezzlement, the DA's throwing everything at them. And the complicated news? Beth's lawyer is claiming she was coerced by John. Says she was afraid for her life, felt trapped in an abusive situation, only went along with the plan because she feared for her safety. I almost laughed. Beth's never been afraid of anything in her life. She once chased a bear out of our backyard with a garden hose. I know that and you know that, but a jury might be sympathetic. Especially if she plays the sufferer card right. What about Ricky? He's cooperating fully. Gave us a complete statement about how John approached him 6 months ago, offered him money and a partnership to spy on you. He's looking at accessory charges, but he'll probably get a plea deal in exchange for his testimony. After Patricia hung up, I sat with my daughters and tried to figure out how to rebuild our lives. Bew, who'd always been mature for her age, was handling it better than I'd expected. Bree was struggling more, asking questions I didn't have good answers for. "Dad," Bree said, "why did Mom want to hurt you? How do you explain to a 13-year-old that sometimes people you love decide they want different things, and they're willing to destroy everything to get them?" "I don't know, sweetheart. Sometimes adults make very bad decisions. But she's our mom." "Yes, she is, and she'll always be your mom. But she's not going to be living with us anymore." Bew looked up from her cereal. "Good," she said quietly. "Bew." "No, Dad, I mean it. She's been different for months, cold, always on her phone, always going out, always making excuses. I thought maybe she was sick or something, but this is worse. She made some bad choices. That doesn't mean she doesn't love you. If she loved us, she wouldn't have tried to eliminate our father." I couldn't argue with that logic. By Monday, I was back at the office, trying to figure out how to run a business without my partner and co-founder. Mary had stepped up, handling the day-to-day operations while I dealt with legal issues and media calls. Our employees were shocked but supportive, and our clients were surprisingly understanding. "Mr. Parrish," Mary said, knocking on my office door. "There's someone here to see you. Says it's about John's share of the business." The visitor was a woman in her 40s, professionally dressed, with the kind of smile that probably cost more than my truck. "Mr. Parrish, I'm Sandra Mills, representing the interests of Jonathan Parrish in the matter of his business assets. John's in jail awaiting trial for trying to homicide me. I'm pretty sure his business interests are the least of his problems. Actually, that's exactly why I'm here. Mr. Parrish has instructed me to negotiate the sale of his share in Parrish Brothers Electrical. He's willing to accept a fair market valuation, minus any disputed expenses." I stared at her. He wants to sell me his half of the company he helped me build, after trying to eliminate me for it? Business is business, Mr. Parrish. Personal matters aside, he has a legal right to the value of his investment. Personal matters aside, he abducted me and drove me into a swamp to feed me to alligators. Allegedly, she said smoothly. And regardless of the outcome of any criminal proceedings, the business partnership remains a separate legal entity. I called Patricia, put her on speaker, and let her handle the legal details. The bottom line was simple. John did have a right to his share of the business. but I had the right to buy him out at a price determined by independent valuation. More importantly, the embezzlement charges gave me grounds to offset his theft against his ownership value. "Tell your client," I said to Sandra Mills, "that he'll get exactly what he's entitled to. After we subtract what he stole, what he owes in legal fees, and what it's going to cost to repair the damage he's done to our reputation. That seems punitive. That seems fair." After she left, I made a decision that felt like jumping off a cliff. I called a press conference. The media had been hounding me for days, wanting interviews, statements, inside details about the swamp homicide plot. Instead of hiding from the attention, I decided to use it. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said to the crowd of reporters gathered outside our office, "I want to make a statement about Parrish Brothers Electrical and recent events involving my former partner." The cameras rolled, and I told the truth. All of it. The affair, the embezzlement, the abduction, the homicide plot. I showed them the evidence. Photos, financial records, recorded conversations. I laid out exactly how John had betrayed not just me, but our employees, our clients, and our community. Parrish Brothers Electrical was built on trust, I concluded. Trust between partners, trust between employees, and trust with our clients. That trust was violated by Jonathan Parrish, but it will be restored. This company will continue to operate with the same integrity and professionalism our clients expect, under new management and with a renewed commitment to the values that built our success. The press conference went viral within hours. Local news picked it up, then regional, then national. By evening, I was getting calls from reporters as far away as New York and Los Angeles. The story had everything the media loved: family betrayal, attempted homicide, business intrigue, and a survivor who fought back. But the real victory came the next day, when our phones started ringing with new business. Clients who'd been considering other contractors called to offer their support. New customers wanted to work with the company that had survived such dramatic betrayal and come out stronger. "Graham," Mary said, grinning as she handed me a stack of new contracts, "we've got more work than we can handle. I think we're going to need to hire more people." "Good problems to have," I said. That afternoon, I got a call from the county jail. Beth wanted to see me. I almost said no. The last time I'd seen my wife, she was in handcuffs being loaded into a police car after trying to have me eliminated. But curiosity got the better of me, and I agreed to visit. The Beth Parrish sitting across from me in the jail visiting room looked nothing like the woman I'd married. Orange jumpsuit, no makeup, hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. But it was her eyes that had changed the most. The warmth, the humor, the spark that had made me fall in love with her, all gone, replaced by something cold and calculating. "Graham," she said, "I'm glad you came. What do you want, Beth?" "I want to make a deal." "What kind of deal?" "I'll plead guilty to the abduction charges, serve my time quietly, don't fight the divorce. In exchange, you don't pursue the embezzlement charges, and you let me see the girls regularly when I get out. That's generous of you, considering you tried to homicide me. I never wanted to hurt you, Graham. That was all John's idea. I just wanted out of the marriage. By faking your passing and stealing everything I'd worked for. By finding a way for both of us to be happy. I looked at this woman who'd shared my bed for 16 years, who'd given birth to my daughters, who'd been my partner in building a life together, and I felt nothing but pity. Beth, do you understand what you've done? Not just to me, but to Beau and Bree? Do you understand how this has affected them? They'll understand when they're older. They'll understand that their mother tried to homicide their father, that she was willing to destroy their family for money and sex. They'll understand that sometimes adults have to make difficult choices. No, Beth. They'll understand that their mother is a sociopath who cared more about herself than about them. I stood up to leave. Graham, wait. Please, I'm trying to make this right. You can't make this right. There is no right. There's just consequences. What do you want from me? I want you to serve your time, leave me and the girls alone, and disappear from our lives forever. And if I don't agree to that, then I'll make sure the whole world knows exactly who Beth Parrish really is. Every detail, every lie, every betrayal. I'll make sure that when you get out of prison, you'll never be able to hide from what you've done. I walked out of that jail knowing I'd never see my wife again. Not the woman I'd married anyway. That person had been gone for months, maybe years. What was left was just a stranger wearing Beth's face. 3 months later, on a Thursday night in October, everything came to a head in a way I never could have predicted. The trial was set to begin the following Monday. John had refused to take a plea deal, convinced he could charm a jury into believing he was the sufferer of my paranoid delusions. Beth had fired her lawyer and was representing herself, claiming she'd been brainwashed by John into participating in the abduction. Ricky had already pled guilty and was serving 18 months in minimum security. I was at home with the girls, helping Bree with her algebra homework when the doorbell rang at 9:30 p.m. Through the peephole, I could see a man in a delivery uniform holding a package. "Graham Parrish?" he asked when I opened the door. "That's me." "Special delivery. Need you to sign here." I signed for the package and closed the door, but something felt wrong. The delivery truck was gone already, and what kind of package required a signature at 9:30 on a Thursday night? I opened the package carefully, using the bomb disposal training that had kept me alive in Middle East. Inside was a cell phone and a note. "Answer when it rings. Come alone. Your daughter's lives depend on it." The phone rang 30 seconds later. "Graham Parrish." "Hello, Graham. This is someone who has a vested interest in making sure John Parrish never goes to trial." The voice was electronically disguised, but I could tell it was a man, probably middle-aged, definitely not from Florida based on the accent. Who is this? Let's just say I'm someone who's invested a lot of money in John's business ventures over the years, money that I expect to get back. John's broke. Whatever he owes you, he can't pay it from prison. Exactly. Which is why he's not going to prison. The hell he isn't. Graham, I want you to listen very carefully. Your daughters are not at home right now. They're safe, but they're not at home. My blood turned to ice. I ran upstairs, checked both bedrooms, empty. Beau and Bree were gone. What do you want? I want you to withdraw your testimony against John Parrish. I want you to change your statements to the police. I want you to say you made everything up because you were upset about your wife's affair. Nobody's going to believe that. They will if you break down on the witness stand, apologizing, admitting you couldn't handle your wife leaving you for your brother. And if I don't, then you'll never see your daughters again, Graham. They'll be taken somewhere far away, hidden from you forever. You won't know where they are, and you'll have no way to reach them. The line went dead. I stood in my empty house, shaking with rage and terror, trying to think clearly. Someone had taken my daughters to force me to let John go free. Someone with enough resources to abduct 2 teenagers from a house I'd turned into a fortress. Someone with connections to human traffickers. Someone who thought John Parrish was worth protecting. Someone with enough resources to abduct 2 teenagers from a house I'd turned into a fortress. Someone with connections to human traffickers. Someone who thought John Parrish was worth protecting. I called 911, reported the abduction, and within 20 minutes, my house was full of FBI agents and local police. They took the phone, traced the call, dusted for prints, and asked me 1,000 questions I couldn't answer. "Mr. Parrish," said Agent Sarah Chen, the FBI agent in charge, "we're going to find your daughters. But I need you to understand something. If you try to handle this yourself, if you do anything to compromise our investigation, you could get them eliminated. What do you want me to do?" "Nothing. Wait, let us work." "How long?" "As long as it takes." I waited 6 hours. 6 hours of sitting in my living room, surrounded by law enforcement officers, drinking coffee that tasted like motor oil, and trying not to think about what might be happening to Bew and Bree. At 4 a.m., the phone rang again. "Time's up, Graham. Have you made your decision? I want to talk to my daughters." "That's not how this works." "Then we don't have a deal." There was a pause, then I heard Bew's voice. "Dad? Dad, we're okay. Don't do what they want. Don't let Uncle John—" The line went dead. Agent Chen was already on her radio, coordinating with the tech team trying to trace the call. But I'd heard what I needed to hear. Bew and Bree were alive, they were together, and they were strong enough to tell me not to give in. "Agent Chen," I said, "I need to make a deal with these people." "Absolutely not. They're going to call back in a few hours with final instructions. When they do, I'm going to agree to their terms. Mr. Parrish, but I'm going to need your help to make sure my daughters come home safe." I spent the next hour explaining my plan to a room full of federal agents who thought I was insane. But Agent Chen, who had teenage daughters of her own, understood what I was trying to do. "It's risky," she said. "If anything goes wrong, we might not be able to protect you or your daughters. If we do nothing, my daughters disappear forever, and John Parrish gets away with everything he's done. And if we do this your way, then we end this once and for all." The phone rang at 8 a.m. "Have you made your decision, Graham?" "Yes, I'll do what you want." "Smart man, here's what's going to happen. At noon today, you're going to hold a press conference. You're going to admit that you lied about everything, the abduction, the homicide plot, all of it. You're going to say you made it up because you were angry about your wife's affair. And then, John Parrish will be released from jail, all charges dropped. Your wife will probably get a reduced sentence, and your daughters will come home." "How do I know you'll keep your word?" "Because I'm a businessman, Graham. Dead children are bad for business. Traumatized children who can identify their hijackers are worse for business. Your daughters will come home healthy and whole, with no memory of where they've been or who took them. You sedated them? Nothing permanent, just something to keep them calm and confused. They'll remember being taken, but not by whom or where they were held. You son of a witch. 12 noon, Graham. Don't be late." I hung up and looked at Agent Chen. "Are you ready?" "As ready as we can be." "You sure about this?" "I'm sure." At 11:45 a.m., I stood in front of the courthouse, surrounded by reporters and cameras, preparing to lie to the world to save my daughters' lives. But I wasn't planning to lie for long. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, "I have a confession to make." The crowd went silent. 3 months ago, I accused my wife and brother of abducting me and attempting to eliminate me. I provided evidence, recordings, photographs. I painted them as monsters who betrayed their own family for money and Zex. I paused, looking directly into the camera. Everything I told you was true. The crowd erupted. Reporters shouted questions, cameras flashed, and I could see confusion on faces throughout the crowd. But today, someone abducted my daughters to force me to lie about that truth. Someone took 2 innocent girls to protect a man who tried to feed me to alligators. Someone thought they could terrorize me into letting John Parrish go free. I pulled out my phone and held it up. This is the phone they gave me to receive their instructions. This is the number they called from. And this, I pressed play on a recording app, is the conversation we had this morning. The hijacker's electronically disguised voice filled the courthouse plaza. Your daughters will come home healthy and whole, with no memory of where they've been or who took them. Agent Chen, I said, looking at the FBI agent standing at the edge of the crowd. I believe you have something to tell these people. Agent Chen stepped forward with a smile that could have powered the city. At 10:30 this morning, FBI agents raided a warehouse in Broward County and rescued Bew and Bree Parrish, along with evidence linking the abduction to a human trafficking ring that has been operating in South Florida for over 2 years. The crowd went wild. The mastermind of this operation, Agent Chen continued, was attempting to protect his investment in various criminal enterprises run by Jonathan Parrish, including money laundering, fraud, and conspiracy to commit homicide. She held up a photograph. Vincent Torino, age 54, was arrested this morning along with 6 associates. Mr. Torino had been using Jonathan Parrish's electrical business as a front for money laundering operations and stood to lose over $2 million if Mr. Parrish went to prison. I took the microphone back. My daughters are safe. The people who took them are in custody, and John Parrish is exactly where he belongs, in a jail cell, waiting for trial. But most importantly, I said, looking directly into the camera, this ends now. No more threats, no more games, no more attempts to silence the truth. John Parrish and Beth Parrish betrayed their own family, stole from their business, and tried to commit homicide. Vincent Torino abducted 2 innocent children to protect his criminal enterprise. They all chose their path. Now they get to live with the consequences. I walked away from the microphone and through the crowd to where Agent Chen was waiting with Beau and Bree. My daughters looked tired and confused, but they were alive and whole and home. "Dad," Beau said, hugging me tight, "we knew you'd find us." "How?" "Because you're our dad," Bree said simply, "and you never give up." 2 weeks later, John Parrish was convicted on all charges and sentenced to 25 years in prison. Beth Parrish pled guilty to abduction and conspiracy charges and received 12 years. Vincent Torino and his associates were convicted of abduction, human trafficking, and racketeering, earning them life sentences without parole. Ricky Chalmers served his 18 months and moved to Colorado, where he started a legitimate private investigation business and sent me a Christmas card every year with a note that just said, "Sorry." Parrish Electrical became Parrish and Daughters Electrical when Beau and Bry both decided they wanted to join the family business. We're the biggest electrical contractor in the state now, with offices in 4 cities and a reputation for integrity that money can't buy. And me? I learned that family isn't about blood or marriage or legal documents. Family is about people who stand by you when the world falls apart, who fight for you when you can't fight for yourself, and who never give up on you no matter how dark things get. John and Beth thought they could destroy me by taking away everything I'd built. Instead, they gave me something better, the knowledge that I could lose everything and still have what mattered most. My daughters came home. The truth came out. Justice was served, and in the end, that's all that really matters.